In this video, let's have a look at my Lamenters collection, or the army which started as scrap. At the back end of 2021, there were two circumstances that married and gave birth to my Lamenters army. The first was my consumption of video content related to these unlucky progeny of the Primarch Sanguinius. The second was a collection of plastic scrap I had accumulated from years of eBay purchases. As you know, I am no stranger to the brush, and I like to stretch myself when it comes to new painting challenges. Or, I suppose you could say I'm also a glutton for punishment. I say this because yellow is a notoriously difficult colour to paint, and freehand checkers are likewise arduous. But the paint scheme alone is not what drew me to these Space Marines. I love the idea of an unlucky chapter, on the losing side of the Badab War, on a century-long penitent crusade, and in a desperate struggle with High Fleet Kraken. To me, they are the classic underdogs, low on resources, but persevering nonetheless. Which of course meant I could justify using some beat-up models and spares from all sorts of places to patch them together. With little or no support from the Imperium on their penitent crusade, they would have to make do, and I could reflect this in the modelling process. I also took into account their story when designing their bases. A dream of mine is to one day use them in a Badab War campaign, a conflict which included ship-to-ship boarding actions. With that in mind, their bases have been modelled as the deck plates of starships. Most of them I scratch-built myself, but more on that later. The first Lamenter I painted was this Monopose Marine from 2nd edition. He was the test, and the guinea pig if you will. After a little experimentation, here's the method I arrived at. The base coat is Avalanche Sunset, but Colourforge Sunset Yellow spray also works well in this scenario. Next is shading with Reichland Flesh Shade Wash. I brought back the base coat with another coat of Avalanche Sunset, then highlighted with a 50-50 mix of Avalanche Sunset and Dark Sand, followed by another highlight of just Dark Sand. I used Mephiston Red on the eye lenses and gunmetal on all the metallic areas. The weapons were painted with Thunderhawk Blue and highlighted with Fenrisian Grey. The artwork shows black on the weapons, but I really wanted to do something different and Thunderhawk Blue seemed a good shout. And finally, there was just the small job of freehand painting the checks and the bleeding heart. So let's run through the models starting with the captain. Being Sons of Sanguinius, I felt Lamenters could justify having a smash captain, and this one was largely scratch built. I started with a spare torso from the Aggressors kit, and added a cape from an old Space Marine Captain kit. Capes and jump packs are not the most sensible idea, but since when is 40k sensible? Moreover, I think I'm totally justified taking one now. G-dubs have recently made their own version after all. The torso had the advantage of having built-in thighs, but as for the knee pads and lower legs, I had to sculpt them from green stuff. Looking at it now, it's a little rough around the edges, but the 3 feet rule applies, and a decent paint job hides a multitude of sins. The other parts were available in my extensive bits collection. The head, like the torso, came from the Aggressors kit as well. He did once have an iron halo on his jump pack, but it went missing somewhere. I don't know, maybe he rolled a 1 when taking his invulnerable save. Next, we have a group of Vanguard veterans, the retinue for the captain. I haven't seen the newest Space Marine Codex for 10th edition, but I think this loadout is illegal now. But if Reddit is to be believed, then this was competitively sound in 9th edition. The Sergeant has a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield, while the others have Lightning Claws and Storm Shields. I've probably spent the most time painting these since they are veterans. I also concede that an army themed around boarding actions probably shouldn't have jump pack troops, but sod it looks rad in my opinion, and Blood Angel's successors always want to be flying around here, there and everywhere, so it made sense to me. I'm not sure what I will do with these now. I guess it doesn't matter. I hardly play games anyway, but I'm not going to rip them apart. It would make me too sad. Speaking of redundant units, here's my other veteran squad. They were classed as company veterans in 9th edition, and you could run them with this loadout, if we call the boarding shields storm shields, that is. These are resin, and I got them off eBay for a silly good price. Like the Vanguard veterans, the sergeant has a thunderhammer and a delightful pelt to keep his crotch warm in the vacuum of space. But really, the model was from a space wolf and I didn't have the heart to deprive him of his furs. The other guys have storm shields and combi melters. Some of these I made myself using bolters and the melter bit from spare Inferno pistols I had. I felt they would be hard-hitting this way, perfect for close quarters actions on starships. Sadly, again, these are totally unplayable, but I won't be dismembering them to chase the meta. The meta is so far away from me I will never catch up, but never mind. The checks and hearts were super fun to paint on these shields, and they scream Lamenters more than any other unit in my opinion. You may notice here that I've gone heavy with the beaky helmets. I suppose this is inspired by old Rogue Trader artwork. In fact, I wanted as many beakies as possible for these. Had I started this army a year later, I would have definitely used the Mark VI Marines from Horus Heresy to finish them off. You may also have noticed by this stage that all my Space Marines are firstborn. Again, this is in keeping with the Badab War era, or the time just after Badab War when the Lamenters were conducting their crusade. So Primaris wouldn't have been available to them then, but it gave me an excuse to use up that scrap I mentioned earlier. And while that scrap is on the agenda, to anticipate further questions, I tend to accumulate this from eBay auctions. Most job lots I buy contain some poorly made and or painted models. These go in the bits box until they are needed. It is cool, I think, that I made an army from such scrap, although it did mean some intensive stripping beforehand.
Farewell, brother, but you will rise again from the bath of purification.
I hope you're not messing up that sink again.
No, I'm just doing some stripping.
They're not, but you don't want the neighbours seeing you like that.
No, I mean, stripping the paint off my models.
What for?
So I can paint them better.
Oh, right, well make sure you clean up your mess and put those clothes back on.
I'm wearing a glove.
Next are a bunch of Devastators. Nothing revolutionary here. I have 2 squads of these. The first has a sergeant with a combi plasma and chainsword. I've never understood the need for putting a power sword or power fist or the like on the sergeant of a Devastator squad. They're not meant for melee, so why kit them as such? Maybe I'm missing something here. I guess in some editions, you may have a few points left over to spend on such luxuries. Anyway, he has a combi plasma for the extra ranged punch. It was also one of the few combi weapons I had left. 2 Marines have las cannons, and 2 have plasma cannons. Again, probably not optimal, but I thought they were cool. Of course, they have an Armorium Cherub buddy as well, from your nightmares, or the imagination of Stephen King, straight to the battlefield of the 41st millennium. I'm not sure if these are cute or the missing character from a Chucky movie. Anyway, here he is. The second Devastator squad has grav cannons and multi-melters. At one point I thought about getting a drop pod to deliver them behind enemy lines and disgorge molten death. But I didn't, because the steam in the Lamenters engine petered out before I bought one. Here's 2 more characters. The first is a librarian. You may recognise him from the Dark Vengeance box set from 7th and 6th edition 40k. Once a Dark Angel, now a Lamenter. I did my best to scrape off the Dark Angel's emblem from his cloth, but it still shows slightly. I'm glad I managed to induct him into this army. He is a delightful sculpt that has been lying in my bits box for years, and now he has a purpose, even if it is to sit in another drawer, but at least he's got paint on him now. This chap is an apothecary. I didn't build him this way, his previous owner did that. For this reason I cannot justify the tabard, though now any bleeding Marines have something to wipe themselves on, while the doc carries out battlefield surgery. We round off the infantry section with these 2 tactical squads. As you can see, there are beakies aplenty, and a range of armour types and backpack types. Again, this is to show the ramshackle nature of this force, taking parts from here and there to patch up their battle damage. I like the way this sergeant turned out. He has a combi plasma, which could have overheated, given the scars on his face and his bionic arm. More beakies, because Mark 6 armor is the best in my view. This missile launcher was built on prayers, spare parts, and desperation. The missile launcher front was missing, so I had to use one from a hunter-killer. One arm and the head are from Primaris kits, but those helmets are very close to Mark IV heads anyway, so I thought why not. I'm sure there's a story that could be crafted around it, but if not, never mind. It's just a plastic miniature. He also has this groin cloth, which are very useful for hiding damaged parts down there, and give him a lovely fresh out of the shower vibe. The special weapon is the grav gun, because, well, I just had one lying around. A few of these are sculpts from the 4th or 5th edition boxed set. I can't tell them apart, to be honest, since they were quite similar. I want to say these are from the 4th edition, because they had ultramarine symbols moulded on. Hopefully someone can put me right in the comments. There's another beaky. And a guy holding a grenade like a karaoke mic. Again, fresh from the shower with his handy loincloth. The second squad sergeant also has a combi plasma. What can I say? I had a few of these lying around, so I might as well use them. On this squad I used the Necromunda bases, since they look pretty good as deck plates. This guy is even rocking the venerated arse parchment. Hide your shame, brother. Here, take the venerated parchment and defile yourself no more.
You could do with some of that parchment for when you're stripping.
Well, I've still got my glove. For the tactical squads, I used white arrow transfers, which were then painted over with black paint. I'm not sure if this is lore accurate, but it's what I started with, and I chose to be consistent. It was an easy win since I have tons of these transfers. So that's the infantry section. But did you notice the difference in the bases? 10 of them were the Necromunda bases, but I didn't want to buy more than one pack, so the rest was scratch built. In each case, I started with a 32mm base and glued thin cardboard to it, along with cable ties and random bits of wire. In some cases, I used cork and metal mesh to decorate the bases, and sometimes I used granny grating, anything to make it look industrial. Making custom bases was half the fun of this little project, and I strongly recommend and encourage all of you to experiment with your bases, to add some extra character to your army. Here's my Dreadnought. He's the plastic kind, the sort that GW doesn't make anymore, which is very sad news for me, but I understand their reasons. And he is ready to serve again and again, armed with an assault cannon, power fist, and flamer. Sorry, I meant the heavy flamer. On the front of the sarcophagus, I scraped away the detail to give me a flat surface to paint the checker pattern on. It seemed the best place for it. For transport, we have an original Rogue Trader era Rhino, since I feel it fits better with their retro aesthetic. This and the Predator were from eBay from around £20 together. A bargain, I thought. Both were painted ultramarines, and both badly. However, the paint was thin at least, so I could paint over it. Surprisingly, this one still has the handrail intact, a rarity among rhinos from that time in my opinion. It also came with the old hunter-killer missile, which I chose to keep. What I did add were hearts made from green stuff. It felt like an opportunity I just couldn't miss. Finally, we have the Predator. It's the metal and plastic Predator Destructor kit that came out at the end of 2nd edition, armed with an autocannon and 2 las cannons, so it doesn't know if it's anti-infantry or anti-tank. Never mind. All outcasts are welcome in my Lamenters army. There's nothing too fancy here, but one thing that amuses me is the droopy autocannon, which has 2 settings, pointing up or down, and nothing between. But please, no innuendos in the comments. Thank you. And there it is, my glorious Lamenters army cobbled together from scrap and eBay purchases. Now I'm being biased here, but I think it looks fabulous with all the checks and bleeding hearts. Sure, there are imperfections and errors in the painting and construction, but it has character, and it's mine. I poured my heart and soul into this army, and it may not be legal or competitive, but I love it all the same. You never know. One day it may find an opponent to reenact some Badab War stuff. But fun fact, I did use it once to proxy as an army for a game of Horus Heresy, and they totally lost, but it was a blast all the same. So will I add more to this army? I'm not saying yes or no for now, but if I had to lean one way, it would be a yes. I think some Terminators would go nicely with them for one, but if you can think of a unit that would go well with what I have, then please let me know in the comments. And if you like what I do, please do have a look at my Instagram. And with that, I had better go paint some more minis. Take care, and thanks for watching.